making mistakes, I mean, that can be even celebrated if somebody's willing to get out there and make mistakes. And I just think how an organization handles that, because that's where the learning is. It's in the mistakes. And
Yeah.
if an organization can create ease and, where there isn't trauma around making a mistake, but, and managers can do it. You can have a situation where the management is doing it, but the company as a whole isn't. But I really think it's leadership setting the tone around the mistakes.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Outreach.io. Every revenue team suffers a sales execution gap, the gap between the potential revenue of an organization and the actual revenue it achieves. To innovate, grow, and win, leaders must embrace technology to improve their team's sales execution. When organizations close the gap and execute at their full potential, they win more deals with less effort, forecast without guesswork, and deliver a better customer experience. Over 5,000 global customers trust Outreach as their sales execution platform. Find out why Outreach is the right solution for your team at click.outreach.io/side.
Hey everybody, my name's Evan Patterson. I am one of the hosts here at The Other Side of Sales. And today I'm joined by
Ryan Woodard, your other co-host. And today we have Lisa Ekeroth. And Lisa is a human rights advocate and abuse survivor who is passionate about the use of communication via intentional language practices as a vehicle for healing the human race. Lisa currently works as a clinical workflows consultant for Ritten, a venture-backed EHR startup. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Ryan. Hey, Evan. Awesome to be here with you guys today.
It's awesome.
Yeah, glad to have you.
Yeah, I want to know more about EHR. It's the first time I actually heard that acronym. I know that that's not anything to do with this episode, but the nerd in me just wants to know. Is this a new thing? Is this an old thing? What is EHR? I Googled it. It's like, I know what it is now, but like, how long has the concept of EHR existed?
It's definitely been in existence for a while. There was a point in the last 20 years when the government created some incentives for electronic health records. So we're specific to behavioral health, mental health, addiction treatment. So those are the kinds of people and programs that we work with, but electronic health records is across all types of healthcare as well.
I didn't know they had entire industries dedicated to making tools for that. So that's just the nerd in me that just likes to geek out about technology. So thank you for that. I know Ryan briefly heard this before we started recording. You and I met through just LinkedIn talking and ranting about people and then stuff like this. And we hit it off. And I was just saying to Ashley in a call with her, who's the founder of Other Side of Sales, I was like, I just loved her vibe, and she just had something to say about everything, and I mean that in the nicest and best way possible. And we both have the same gripe with people. It's take down the facade and be yourself and get vulnerable, get messy, because that's when the real magic happens. And also, something before recording, Ryan was talking about his, it's an atypical but becoming more typical management and leadership style. Ryan, do you want to kind of go back to that so we can springboard from there?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things we were discussing was it seems like SDRs, when they get ushered into this tech sales role, one, onboarding and learning technology, if you've never had any experience with SaaS, it can be pretty overwhelming. And then they have this kind of like idea of what is formal and professional, and they think they're doing that. But on the other end, it sounds like a robot's reaching out to them. It's like Google Translate formal, and that's what comes out at the other end. And so trying to get them to like insert some humor, insert some personality into their outreach, while also being insightful, impactful, and valuable, is just, I feel like that's like a real big hurdle to get people to like kind of break out of that, what they expect, formal and professional to be.
All right. Yeah. And I think we went to, the traumas that people have endured in the workplace that lead them to believe they have to kind of take on a robotic facade in a professional environment, that's what professional means.
For sure, for sure. And that's, one of the big, I think I called it post-traumatic bad job syndrome,
Yeah.
where any kind of like vulnerability you share, or any kind of like shortcoming that you feel like you have that maybe you want to like improve in an area, it's not ever taken with, an approach of like, yeah, let me help you, you know, get better at this or improve at this. It's taken with a grain of like, okay, so this is this person's shortcoming. If push comes to shove, they don't hit quota. Yeah, I know that I can lean on this and get them up out of here. And that's really not the way to manage. I mean, if we're going to make investments in people and all the money that goes into hiring, recruiting, training, so forth, it just seems really, for lack of a better word, really stupid to have like 1 month or maybe even like 2 or 3 months of not hitting quota kind of dictate if a person's valuable or not to the organization. For kind of a bring it full circle, when we look at the data for outreach, we don't just go off like 1 or 2 weeks of data. We try and look at quarterly trends, monthly, quarterly trends to kind of like forecast how things will work versus, a day or a week or a couple weeks. And I kind of feel like that same kind of logic applies to SDR development and sales development in general.
But don't you think like making mistakes, I mean, that can be even celebrated if somebody's willing to get out there and make mistakes. And I just think how an organization handles that, because that's where the learning is. It's in the mistakes. And if an organization can create ease and, where there isn't trauma around making a mistake, but, and managers can do it. You can have a situation where the management is doing it, but the company as a whole isn't. But I really think it's leadership setting the tone around the mistakes.
Yeah. And also to something I would say that I'm sure you'll agree with this one, or at least you'll relate to it. When you survived any sort of trauma or abuse outside of the workplace, and you get over that hurdle and you come out to the other side, at least for me and how I think, I'm curious your thoughts. You can take that blueprint of like analyzing those situations and getting to a better place and applying it to the unfair stuff that also happens maybe in the workplace as well. So, and you mentioned before this, you've been an abuse survivor and you've gone through a whole lot of stuff that is separate from your work life. And I'm curious to know, what would you say is the overlap between that and work? How can someone take lessons, and you can use yours as an example if you feel comfortable, in your personal life to apply this to how do I get over my work trauma?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. When I got started, I was definitely carrying all that trauma with me. When I got started in SaaS sales about 2 years ago, I was definitely carrying it all around with me in my backpack, unaware. And I actually had some really incredible leaders at my first company that it was like, it just was, I don't know, there was something magical they were able to do. They probably didn't even realize it. So there was actually a lot of healing that happened without me even trying to, because I was showing up with a lot of stories about what it was going to be like. And I was prepared for those terrible stories. I was prepared to deal with them. I had my plan. I knew I was going to be tough, just kind of came in armored up. And I just had some really lovely mentors that, man, yeah, like I was saying about the mistakes, making mistakes was okay. There wasn't any shame. Yeah. There's a word, the eradication of shame in the workplace. I just think that's really good.
On a t-shirt. Yeah.
Sounds like we got some content. We'll do like the Game of Thrones on the t-shirt. Shame.
Eradicate shame over and over again. I just keep, maybe this is my age speaking here, but like I remember thinking of like our movie Mulan with like with Mushu, like shame on you, shame on your cow, shame on, like it's a long list. And like about a couple of years ago, there was a meme that got brought up. It was like, it was shame on you, shame on your cow. It was like shame on your couch, shame on your hairdresser. And then like people just kept adding unnecessary layers. And it just ended with shame on this meme. I was like, I love that. So every time someone says shame eradication, I just think of Mushu from Mulan. That's all I think of. Oh. I'm such an immature adult. Ryan, while I collect myself, You've been having to deal with some people at companies that have some trauma. So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on all of this and how that relates to what Lisa's been saying.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that comes to mind with me is you can have, because you mentioned like management style being,
Yeah.
very like open to failure, letting people have those experiences. I feel like that's where a lot of the learning's done. And I don't really look at like failure as a negative, but I think one of the biggest challenges is getting like you as a, I always think like individual contributor, this is what I control. Manager, these, I don't want to say this is these people I can control, but like my team is what I'm responsible for. But getting it to be like systemic through the company as far as a management style of letting people fail, being, open to like leaning into those tough conversations about where they failed at, why, and not having it feel like, okay, well, this is ammunition that I can use when it comes time to like, oh, you're not hitting quota, so now here, let me build this case to HR, and now we can wash our hands and you're gone. I struggle with like how to get away from that approach and make those failures and so forth like a systemic wide kind of like, hey guys, like we spent money, time in hiring, recruiting, onboarding, further professional development and so forth. Like, why are we pulling the plug on this person after a couple, maybe like a quarter or a few months of low performance, and trying to like get to the bottom of that? If it's like maybe the toxic sales culture, which this is my guess, is that it's like prevalent not just in individual contributors and managers, but it's all the way up to the top, which you think like what was it, trickle down economics? It's like trickle up toxicity. And so how do we break that? Where does it start from? Because we've seen like slow shifts. Like I think I call it like the gulag sales of like the 90s, like Jordan Belfort type environments have like gone away, and we've moved towards more consultative selling and trying to invest in people. But there's still like that gap where as a person of color, I feel like oftentimes we aren't given or even any kind of diverse individual. It's like you're not given that same leash as somebody that like fits that boys club or the prototypical boys club. And so I struggle with like how to make it a systemic effect and not just like my team effect, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Lisa, you mentioned you had a plan when you came into your last role. I'm curious to know, can you tell me more about what you mean by plan?
Yeah.
Specific to how am I going to deal with all my shit, all my triggers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not just the plan I meant. Is that what you wanted to know about?
Yeah. Like, are there examples of like things or coping mechanisms within that strategy in your mind that maybe somebody else could, you don't have to relay the trigger necessarily, but what would you have done situations that somebody else might be able to like pick up and insert into their own plans, or maybe they're trying to make one?
Totally. So I have, and I still do this, but I've kind of downsized it, but I would have a work journal and a me journal in front of me at all times in my day-to-day. So if I felt triggered by something, I knew that I had the space to say something about it, even if I couldn't talk to anybody about it.
Yeah.
I was really lucky that
I like that.
I ended up not using that as much. And I ended up having people at my company I could talk to about anything. And that was really lucky. I was prepared to deal with it on my own. And then the same with the work journal of just like, okay, if I'm in a situation where, because one of the places that I had to grow a lot at first was feeling comfortable asking for help. I felt like I had to figure everything out on my own. And so initially I was like, okay, I have to figure this out and I have to make time to figure this out. And I'm like writing down everything, because I came into this role previously running my own businesses. So it's just like brain training. It's like, hey, no, there's people that are there to help you. You just ask them. You just send them a Slack message. I'm like, oh man, I got to figure all this stuff out. No, actually, somebody already, you just need to go talk to them. So yeah, the journaling was really helpful. And just if someone didn't have that type of culture, that was something that I was prepared for in my own mind. But I ended up having people. And
that's great.
That was some of the healing for me, actually.
That's great. I think that's also a powerful lesson in the fact that there's so much content out there about the red flags of workplace culture, but it's like here you're outlining like the green flags, like it's the good things, right? And usually when people have traumatic experiences in their personal lives and in their work lives, they can gloss right over some of the green flags, and rightfully so. I get it. Hello, PTSD, post a child. I understand. So it sounds like the green flags were people proactively like letting you know that this was available before it was even needed, or was it as it kind of happened, or was it a bit of both?
I'd have to contemplate the like how that all went down to answer like with complete accuracy. I just know that I am very much like I'm a trial and error type of person.
Same.
So, if I couldn't figure something out, I would ask somebody. That was always my last resort. And
Yeah.
that I think eventually that went really well. It was a lot easier than trying to figure out everything. And sort of recognizing like, hey, this is also like if you work at a bigger company, it's sort of like a personality game. It's like, well, which personalities do I flow with, and we can just be allies for each other. And then the workday is so much easier. You can hack through anything if you just have that one person or that two or that three people that you can Slack and be like, oh my God, I'm dying with this. And they're like, oh my God, I wish I could give you a hug. And you're just like, oh, suddenly you feel seen, you feel heard, and you can manage, So I think look, getting the lay of the land and assessing like this is a valid human need. Connection and empathy are valid human needs, and you need them in your workplace, and trying to figure out like where am I going to get that here, and forging those alliances for yourself.
Yeah, the power of a good work bestie. I know Ryan and we should probably start like a national holiday for like so appreciation of your work bestie, those allies. T-shirts. We got a whole merch store out of this episode. We got a whole merch store coming. Now, Ryan, you get to look at this team of SDRs, and if I know any of the SDRs, they're usually like young in their careers, not just biologically. So, do you get to watch the little like allyships form from above and just like see the chaos like looking down? Because my team, I do have that, but it's not big enough to watch it happen with. So, I'm really curious to see. Do you see benefit of what Lisa's talking about in your own organization?
For sure, for sure. And one thing that my hiring practice is a little different. I don't just hire young people to pound the phones. I try and hire people that are looking to one, get a career where they can, learn. That to me was always like the most exciting part, to almost to a fault, like the paralysis by analysis, where
it's almost like I knew Ryan was going to say this, by the way.
Well, it's like you get to learn about all these cool different companies, but if if you have like horse blinders on and you're focused on this one company, then you're not looking at like your total book of business. And so the learning part is super exciting. But what has been fun for me is I've got two women that work for me that I think I don't want to expose their age, but I want to say they're both my senior. But don't hold me to that. And then I've got two guys that are both my junior. And one of them came out of this prestige Indianapolis program called the Orr Fellowship. And he's our youngest. And like seeing him, like the light bulbs kind of go off for each of them, and like their spider senses start tingling and start like seeing things that I take for granted, that like I think like, how do you this not like make you, how does this not make the bells go off? But seeing all that, and then seeing them like form their little communities and their friendships, and like even though they're not like the same demographic and so forth, like they all like have these similar experiences through cold calling that like bonds them. And then when not to toot my own horn, but they have a SDR manager that's not like, oh, well, how many meetings do you have this month? And
you're not the party pooper.
Yeah, and I'm like trying to like really invest in them and get them to like insert their own flavor into these cold calls. You start to see like, they'll start bouncing ideas off each other without me prompting them with a question, and they'll like come to me with questions as a team instead of like one individual coming and then I have to answer their question. And then, it's like I'm all of a sudden a record player because they all have this question. They collaborate and they feel, empowered. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you've talked about that really helps these teams is, empower you're a team. If they don't feel like you're empathetic and you're going to be helpful and there for them, then how do you expect them to like come to work as their whole selves and want to like do their best work for you? I definitely agree 100%. That is one of the biggest things is empathetic leadership, empathetic sales. I preach that. I actually changed my like headline to kind of focus on one thing that I'd be curious for both of your input on this, but the connect and pitch on LinkedIn is out of control lately. Like over the last like 2 months, it went from like I'd get like 1 or 2 every like month to like
because it's lacking empathy. Is that where you're going with this? Yeah.
Yes, like 20 in inbox, where they're like, "Hey Ryan, I'd love to have you in my network." I'm like,
I'm not going to give my answer because I have an episode on the Other Side of Sales' website with my answer in it, so they can go check that out. But Lisa, I am curious to know how there's a lack of empathy in social selling from your perspective. I'm assuming you've either seen it by sitting next to somebody doing it, or you've been on the receiving end.
So social selling, like, are people actually going to posts and commenting and trying to build relationship?
That's the correct way.
And really get to know people, and you really have to be willing to invest emotionally. It doesn't have to be that you're invested in an outcome, but you have to use your emotional intelligence if you're going to effectively social sell. I know for our current ICP and our current market, like, some of them are on LinkedIn, a lot of them aren't. So those muscles in me I'm not using them as much right now. I'm doing tons and tons of cold calling.
A skill that I don't possess.
Ooh, do we get to hear your pitch on this call? Since you
What's
do lots
that?
of cold, I said, since you do lots of cold calling, are you going to give us a preview of your pitch on this call?
I can. I was going to add to what you were saying about how to.
I got squirrel moment.
This is me dodging. How to create empathy. And it's trust.
Yeah. You got to earn trust.
That's the missing piece, and that's the systemic. So when you're talking about your team and how do you create that culture where it's okay to fail, you hire people you trust.
Yeah.
And you hire people that trust you. And how do you know if you trust people? You just know. So it's back to gut instinct. That's my opinion.
Oh, I agree. And you had mentioned before, like, you were a single parent, you didn't have much family to lean on, and it was a pandemic, and you had the abuse, and you were switching careers, all these things all at once. So I could totally understand where your mindset was coming from of like, I've got to learn it all on my own. And because you basically, it sounds like you felt like you were in a situation where you were all on your own. That's got to be really scary, even when you do know you can trust that person. It's like letting yourself trust that person, at least for me. So I wanted to know, like, what was was there a breaking point or a turning point when you realized like you've got to start leaning on other people, or was it simply as put as like you mentioned earlier, like the people just helped you out? Did that make it easier in your personal life outside of work once people let you in?
I think it really started with the trainings that I went through. And when I was researching pivoting and doing SaaS sales, there's a lot of different trainings out there on the market. And I came really close to signing up for one that is really well known for taking advantage of people and, garnishing their paychecks for years in the future, thinking that was the only option. And I was lucky that I had people that I trust talk me out of that and be like, there's no way that that's the only option. So I dug and I found Aspireship, and that showed me like, oh, there are people who value the same things that I value in this industry. There are people who value emotional intelligence, who value empathic communication, who value treating people the way that they deserve to be treated and the way that they want to be treated. And that was an education in and of itself for me to know, okay, for me, it's less about what product do I want to sell or what market do I want to dive into and where are my people? And so I just started really focusing on that when I was out looking for my role. Like, I'm going to be me. And if it sticks, then this is probably a good fit. If it doesn't stick, I'm not going to worry about it, because I knew that my people were out there. I just had to find them.
Yeah, I relate. I went through a similar journey where it's like, I got to find my tribe. I can worry about the product and the other stuff later, right? Like the first thing is, do I even like it here? I mean, do I feel safe here? That stuff. And shout out to Aspireship, by the way. I'm a fan of what they do. We're not talking about the place that sounds like Refired. That's what they sound like. There you go. Another t-shirt, more merch.
Yeah, we're not talking about them.
Yeah, we're gonna Lisa's gonna email us after, Ryan, going, okay, and when this store opens, I want a 30% cut of the revenue,
30.
not profits.
You're selling
revenue.
her short.
No, revenue, not profits. Because I know it's going to be like a 70% cost to the t-shirt. So we're going to make no profits off this. Our entire profit margin. I work in marketing when you think in terms of revenue and not profits. Well, I was really curious to know, as somebody who doesn't have kids, okay.
I've got one on the way.
Yeah, well, early congrats. So feel free to speak down to me, because that is definitely the truth here. How much harder is it to be looking for a job as a single parent? I like, is it more difficult? Because like, I feel like looking in, it can be, but is it, in terms of the workload or the stress? I don't know.
It's so difficult. I mean, well, and we're talking about during the pandemic. So
yeah,
during the really the heart of when we were all kind of sharing this traumatic experience of like, we're all disconnected, we're all isolated, we don't know how long it's going to last, this feeling of like everybody's holding their breath,
Yeah.
During those first 6-8 months of the pandemic. Everybody in my house was really struggling during that time. My daughter was struggling with her mental health. My son was struggling because he's very bonded to my daughter. My daughter was very unavailable to him, and she's a teenager and kind of going through challenging teenage years in this particular case. So, just really trying to shield them from, I think my biggest thing was like, I don't want them to know that there's any chance that we're not going to be okay. And so that's, just always on the forefront of my mind. Like, okay, I get to be in battle mode, but like behind closed doors, and, come outside. And I think the challenge there is that as a single parent, you have very little time to just deal with the humanness of your life, because you're doing your professional mode, and then you're being the parent that you need to be. And if you don't have somebody to tag team with, you may or may not, be able to re-up.
Yeah, I always forget that like being a parent is like a job, in the sense like, when I log off work, I'm just Evan off the clock. When you log off, you go right into Lisa the parent mode.
Another job.
Another job. Yeah.
Mom or
Ryan,
dad or.
Yeah, you've got a baby on the way, so I'm very curious to know what your questions are now. As somebody who just like, I got stuffed animals to put through college, like that's it. So that's my fund.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm supremely lucky, fortunate, grateful that I have a wonderful wife that I do get to tag team this with, and it just affords us both some freedom to get away from children, because it's not a part-time job. It's not like I'm not trying to correct you, Evan, but I don't think she wears her professional hat and then mom hat. I think the mom hat's always on, and she's just a professional.
I prefaced with the fact that I don't know anything about parenting. I can barely take care of myself. I just have to call my parents going, hi, I have a heater in my furnace I'm supposed to change every 3 months. I lived here for 2 years and 3 months, and I don't know how to change it, Mom. Help. So, yeah, I can't have kids. So that's why the question was stupid. Because I'm stupid.
Well, you're not stupid.
In this category, I think it's okay. It's like a report card. F. I haven't got an F in parenting.
It changes you in ways that you don't know that it will. And it brings things out in you that you don't know you have. So I'll just say that.
Okay, I need to go to the gerbil.
Yeah, I know it's changed me. I've had some help in learning. I'm not equating children to dogs, but I have two big dogs, a Great Dane and a Hound mix, and both of them think they're humans. So they are very needy. They need love all the time. They expect love from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. I don't expect my child to expect love. I expect my child, like, I'm going to give them love 24/7. That doesn't change. But sometimes with the dogs, it's like, man, I wish I could get rid of you guys for like just a day or two. I'm sure it's probably the same with children, but depending on the age. But you know, it's just it's changed me in a way that it's made me more patient, which that's one of my biggest faults is things that come easy to me. I like tend to think it should come easy to other people, and this is like reframed my brain of like, okay, this came easy to you. Why did it come easy to you? What did you do? What did you recognize? How can you, and you know, to get back to the point of communication, how can I communicate this to somebody that doesn't have this like foresight or this understanding of these like tactics, whether it's SDR tactics or the child, maybe it's like, I don't know, do the dishes, clean your room. I don't know. So, you know, that's been one of the biggest things is that it's really made me a lot more patient. It's helped my like listening skills, not just from like listening to a prospect, but listening to myself, because children pick up on things that maybe we're not privy to at a very young age. And so that's like just a couple of things that I'm grateful for that I've like been able to recognize before she's in this world, so that I'm privy to it ahead of time. But one thing I'm kind of curious about is, you know, like I think one thing kind of in the same sense that I mentioned the idea of like this formal SDR, we kind of tend to think of like, this is what like great parenting looks like. What are some of the things that you feel like transferred? I know like tenacity and grit were two big things you mentioned in sales that like you feel like are kind of universal. What kind of things do you think you've taken from your sales experience that have helped you be a better parent? We haven't ever asked this question, Evan.
The reverse
Usually
order,
yeah. Usually it's always like, what has made you a better salesperson from being a parent? I'm curious, like, what have you learned from sales that you feel like has transferred over into your day to day as a parent?
Well, so just to kind of give a little background, I ran my own business and essentially been in some form of sales for more than 20 years. And most of the time I was just selling myself, not a product, and services that I provided to people, specifically mind, body, wellness type of things. Those were the businesses that I ran for a long time. I think having a vision is the biggest thing. You have a vision and you can relax into it and trust. And you can, if your vision is strong enough, you feel a sense of, especially if you've ever gone through the experience of having your vision come to fruition and you know what that feels like, it's a lot easier to know that those daily activities, whatever they are going to result in the outcome that you see in your mind. I mean, I'm really into visioning. I'm really into, you know, writing down my goals and visualizing. And I do that for my family, you know, and I would definitely say that is a transferred thing. Like just in terms of, okay, today it might be a hard day, you know, today my daughter doesn't understand anything I'm saying to her, you know, today my son feels really left out and sad and lonely, you know, and just knowing like I have my vision for my family and I know that nothing is going to get in the way of it. And it's okay to have a bad day.
I like that. Another t-shirt. And it's okay to have a bad day. It's all these great quotes straight out of Lisa. I think that's my gripe too, because I struggle to write down my goals. So I understand the power in that physical motion alone can have a massive impact on your body's way of listening to what you're trying to achieve, not just your mind's way of listening. At least that's for me. I'm really curious to know what are like some daily habits that you have, maybe as a professional or not, when it comes to that mindfulness that someone listening to here might be able to pick up on.
So during I love that question. During the pandemic, I went back to my roots. My early training, I started training in yoga at 16 as a runaway, and I was running away from a traumatic home and a lot of really, really scary situations. And I was really lucky that I stumbled upon some people who took me to a yoga class, and I fell in love with it. So I just kind of went back to my roots. For me, my roots are yoga and meditation. And the pandemic really, that was a gift for me, actually. One of the gifts of the pandemic, like, hey, everything stopped. Oh, really? I get to meditate for 2 hours a day. And I've been dreaming of when I could do that in my adult life. And it's been never. I've never been able to do that I could do it before I had children and before I was even worrying about profession back in I lived in a yoga ashram in San Francisco for 3 years, from 18 to 21. I could definitely do it in those days because all I had to do was teach yoga a couple times a day. I could meditate for hours. So getting back into meditation, I think meditation is so powerful. And I think people really overcomplicate it. There's a lot of different styles of meditation. There's silent meditation, there's breathing meditation, you can do sound meditation, and each person just needs to figure out what is the thing that resonates with them. And you don't have to get good at all of them. It's about connecting to the present moment, and however you do that best. For a long time, I meditated the best while I was moving, not while I was being still.
I'm that way. I've taken a lot of mindfulness classes and I've taken a few yoga classes, and I've learned that, to your point, there's different types of meditation. I do not do well with like silent meditation or any meditation that requires like sitting still and like that, like the whole like grounding and touching and feeling techniques, because for me, my triggers, those are all my triggers. Those are all not pleasant things that I just described in my mind. So I've learned, for me, it's like there's a way to make meditation fit into running. There's a way to make meditation fit into dancing. Even I did not realize like half the things I was doing, there's a way to like flip a switch and add a layer to it that make it more beneficial. Like dancing in a nightclub, there's a way to make that meditation, y'all. I did not know that until I took these classes. So there's power in what you're saying. I understand that. I think more people need to talk about that. That's content for you. But that's more people need to talk about. There's more than one way to meditate. You just got to find the way that works for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you have the luxury or if you're lucky enough to get to try different styles, you can, that's how I feel. I feel like I have a toolbox, and I'm like, oh, today I need this, and you can just, you don't have to be a robot. I think there's a lot of people like, performance enhancing experts that would, tell you that you have to do this same thing every day. And, I just think, for me, that isn't the case. Setting aside time, yes, I need to do that every day. But there's more to be had in the relationship that I have with myself as a growing individual if I can tune in on any given day to see like, well, what is going to be most beneficial to me today,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also important that like, the development coaches and stuff, my gripe with some of these things, it's like they always preach like monetize everything you do. Also, it's like, just have a hobby, y'all. Like I can't remember where it was. I think it was like the Financial Diet on Instagram was recurating somebody else's content where they said like studies show there's like some percentage over 70%. It was over that number. I know that people that have hobbies that they invest time and sometimes money into, that have nothing to do with work, make them better at work and also everything else in their life too. So it's just like, there is power behind you doing this without making money can weirdly make you better at your job, which would therefore equal you would make more money at your job.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I think you touched on something really, really big that never gets spoken about, and that is this obsession with monetizing everything. And I think that a lot of people are getting robbed of the richness of their own personal relationship to an activity. Yeah. I just think that's across the board. There's like a sickness happening in our culture that, people aren't talking about because everybody's obsessed with making more money. But, and I mean, I feel like I'm even a victim of it because I won't make time for things that aren't pushing me forward. There are certain things that I want to spend more time doing that mean nothing to my job and nothing to my kids. And it's just like quirky things that I like doing, like art or jewelry making or taking photos, but not posting them on social media, but taking photos because I enjoy spending time in nature or whatever. It's like,
yeah,
that's going to take discipline on my part to invest in that. And that's going to result in me having a more well-rounded relationship with myself.
I have friends that make websites that never see the light of day just because they like to see the finished product of the website that they build. That's it. Same thing. Taking pictures you never post. Same thing.
Yeah, my mom was like a huge hobbyist growing up, and growing up, I was like, "Oh, mom's a nerd. This is super boring." But she's so super talented. She handmade my sister's wedding dress, like all the sequins and all the amazing lace work. Just amazing woman, and I'm glad that like I got some of those like skills as far as like I love to learn new things. I got a quote on replacing carpet with hard floors like 5 years ago, let's just say. And when I saw the price, it was like one of those moments. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to put down floors. I guess.
Every homeowner listening to this call is like, yeah. Then there's me as a renter, can't relate.
And so I learned how to do it myself. I, looked at YouTube, bought a couple books, and tried it and replaced, like I want to say like 800-ish square feet or 1,000 square feet of home with hard floors instead of carpet. And from there, a new hobby was born called woodworking. And now I have like drill press, track saw, table saw, power planer, joiner, all these like equipment to turn a rough piece of lumber into hopefully something beautiful when it comes out the other end. Sometimes it's not very beautiful. And I have sunk a lot of money, my wife would say, between golf and that into those hobbies. But, it's like just the whole learning about wood movement and learning about all these different things has like, I feel like it's just made me more like inquisitive. And when I'm prospecting, like I feel like it's just made my, to lack of a better word, my spider senses tingle more. Yeah. So do you feel like you've experienced that too, where like your hobbies, whether it's yoga or anything that's like not monetary driven, has had that like impact on your actual like profession where you are trying to drive profit and revenue and so forth? Do you see the connection there? Do you feel like there's been one in your life or anything that you care to share that is like a hobby you like doing that really is transferred into your sales career?
Absolutely. Well, something that I'm really passionate about, we mentioned at the beginning, is communication practices. And I'm going through a course right now called the Authentic Life course through a company called Authentic Revolution. And just in the 2 weeks that I've been doing this course, and I'm doing this for me, I'm not doing it for work. But, for me, I want to build as many skills as I can around authentic communication. So it's like, okay, maybe it'll be somewhere listed on something, but really I signed up for this for me. And having a space to be with other people and examine challenging questions openly with one another. That's a skill, and then being able to hold space and have those insights. I've had so many insights about my relationship to my job, my relationship to how I'm executing my goals. And there's nothing in the course that's focused on profession. It's just happening naturally.
I love that. Can I ask a challenging question?
Please.
Ooh, this is going to get juicy. So you mentioned that you don't think that there are barriers where people say there are, and that, the kind of person that can figure out how to break into tech sales is the kind of person that can thrive in tech sales, regardless of age, gender, so forth. But I continue to see bad practices that by companies that do exclude people of diverse backgrounds. And so I'm curious if you could elaborate on that, because like my gut is like, I don't agree with that, but I've kind of taken a step since, this is the one good thing Donald Trump has brought to me is like, I don't just get triggered by a headline. I'm like, okay, that sounds stupid. That kind of would piss me off, but how about I just like take it down a notch and read the entirety of the article first before I draw any conclusion, or wait
If there's
a month.
anything American society gained from that presidency, it was read the article.
Yes, or wait for the whole truth to come out before I get like really on my high horse or my pedestal and think I need to preach. So I'm curious, like what in your, because I think like obviously all three of us have way different experiences in life, way different experiences in sales. And
Yeah, some of us are raising human beings, others are, trying to figure out how basic home appliances work.
So I'm just curious what's led you to think that people, regardless of like age, gender, and so forth, can break into this career, and that maybe the barriers we perceive or we think we perceive aren't necessarily like really those barriers that are there.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up what may be considered a challenging question, and there's so many different responses happening all at once, so I'm just going to have to maybe sort through them. But I can't speak to what it's like to be anybody but me. So I want to say that right now, and I don't want to, and I will never trample on somebody else's experience or invalidate it. I don't do that, and I don't want anything that I've said to come off as that, because that is not my MO as a person.
I didn't get that feeling either.
Oh yeah, we're not getting that vibe. Yeah, you wouldn't be invited here.
That's what's in my heart. But I think that statement is a response to what I perceive to be a lot of hype about how do you break in? How do you break in? And maybe one too many LinkedIn posts about, if you think it's tough to do this, try this or whatever. And just going, it's more of a response to that mindset of like,
the clout chasing LinkedIn post that whatever flavor of the week is in session, let's make it, let's post about this, about how
I'm so attacked with somebody that makes a living.
I'm so glad you said it, because I've been feeling this, I don't know, like in some of my social circles, it's almost like borderline hatred, and I don't like having hate in my heart, but like the clout chasing is so exhausting that like, I know you didn't do that, but you can't say that, because then it's like you're diminishing, it's like you said, you're almost like trampling on somebody's experience. But it's like, is this really your experience, or is this made up and you're clout chasing right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think wrapping your head around it is, I had the benefit of spending several months trying to wrap my head around it. Like, what is this beast, And I think if anybody thinks they want to check it out, I think just plan to spend some months trying to wrap your head around it. Once you grok it, you can do it. It's not rocket science, so I think if, I got my first job because I reached out to somebody on LinkedIn, I did the job before getting the job. I think it's that simple. Maybe
that stuff works a lot. Yeah.
Maybe it's harder for somebody who doesn't look like me. Maybe it's harder for somebody who has another skin color, or maybe they're going to get discriminated against. I can't speak to that, and I wouldn't feel right trying to speak to that experience. But, I'm over 40, I mean, I haven't experienced a lot of
you were like 23, girl.
I haven't experienced a lot of ageism, but I also kind of flip at the bird all day long. I'm just like, whatever, I don't let that faze me, but, and maybe it's been there and I haven't noticed it. I can also be very, as you probably noticed some of my answers to questions, I'm very much an eternal optimist. So there may have been some crap slung at me that I didn't even notice.
I actually really like that. That's the one thing that I was the most impressed by when I first met you in the first like 15 minutes was as somebody that has to actively turn off their pessimistic self, because that's my default state. I was like, this is something that like, there's something about this woman that I can definitely feed off of and like work into my like way of thinking, because that is something that I've actively been working on the past few years. So I've gotten better. We got a long way to go, but yeah, I think it's because I have people in my life that are toxic. It's like toxically positive. They've gone to the extreme of what you've alluded to the point where it's like they just refuse to acknowledge anything negative, so therefore it actually gets worse. It's like if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist, that kind of a mindset. So I'm just like, oh well, there's a balancing, there's a way to balance this, and Lisa's nailed it. So I would love to figure that out on my own. So I'm going to be re-listening to this episode myself and dinging you after this also on LinkedIn. I think we're about to go into the rapid fire questions, which are obviously incredibly humiliating. I'm totally kidding. They're usually humiliating for me and Ryan because we butcher them or something like that. And I was also holding back a bad pun this entire time of Ryan, would you say you're a Ryan Woodard worker? No, too bad. Okay.
I like that.
I love that. Let's pretend to think that was good, everybody, all at once.
He's Ryan Woodworking instead of Ryan Woodard. But I do make all of my like handles so now I'm like doxing myself, but anybody that sees me on like League of Legends or any nerdy stuff, I always use Wood TV as my name, and everybody thinks it's like
dox
a
yourself
Twitch
as a online handle. What?
I mean, they could connect the dots.
Is it doxing when I say find me on Instagram? Like
I think it's when you're like trying to be anonymous on a certain channel, and then you like give away a hint that like connects the dots. So yeah, everybody, if you ever kill me in League of Legends, Wood TV, this is who you're killing. So yeah, it's all good. But man, I'm definitely
apologize to all the people I met in Second Life for my behavior when I was in my teen years then. All right.
Right. What I look forward to before we transition, but I hope Lisa, that we stay in touch, because you have hit on some things that I think are profound that I think like kind of happen in like echo chambers. Like the conversations happen in echo chambers with either like, people of color or the gay community, women, and so forth. And it's like they're, for lack of a better word, it's like these siloed conversations, like siloed tech, that we're all having these same similar style conversations, but we don't think the others are. And it's like, I want to break down these silos and have these conversations as not like a group of people of color, a group of LGBTQ, a group of women, but like as just a group of people. And I think that's, to your point of like healing, that's where like a lot of the healing and so forth can take place, is like, oh shit, you're not that different from me. We do share a lot of these same passions. We do kind of share maybe some of the same fears, but we're maybe not as open to talk about them because we're fearful of, pushback. Because, a lot of our fears are driven by like societal experiences and so forth. Right. And if you feel like they're diminished all of a sudden, and it's not taboo to like share that, like, hey, this is kind of like, this kind of like makes me feel a little icky. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I'd like to talk about it. It's like all of a sudden, oh, you're a phobe, or you're this, or you're that. It's like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's not use such loaded language, and let's, like try and find a place where we can move forward. And I think you've hit on a lot of that. Like, I just love the way your style is. I'm glad Evan asked you to do this interview, because it's made me think of some things that I wasn't as privy to. So I just want to say thank you.
One of the things, I'm thankful for the same reasons, because Lisa, you very much have like an approach that's a lot more thoughtful, where I'm just like, let me unleash the fire hose. Like, it's just like that's me. Like that's me. I am a 0 to 3,000 kind of a human being. My boss might even say I start at 100. Like there's no 0. I'm always there. So I get it. I have a lot to learn from your approach to these things. I would probably be a lot happier person. So Ryan, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? I can't remember which one of us went first. Thanks for rapid fire questions.
Yeah, for sure. So Lisa, first, this has just been fantastic. Again, want to reiterate that. So we're going to end the show like we always do. It's just a series of rapid fire questions. It's nothing too crazy. It might like make you think a little bit. So I'll kick it off. And what is your morning routine? We really want to know.
shared a little bit about that. If I'm lucky
Yeah.
enough to get up before 6, I'm going to meditate every morning. I'm going to read through my visions for the day. Like my visions, there may be something that I need to add. I try to drop in and add once I've read through them. If there's something that like, oh, you know what? I need to elaborate on this. And then I actually have a wonderful friend who invited me to do a reading from a Thich Nhat Hanh book. We have a daily reader a call that we do together. So that kind of rounds out my getting ready for work routine. Is we get on and we read one day and we contemplate and meditate together.
That's great.
That's
I love
awesome.
that. My only gripe was I can't function before 8 a.m. So I envy your ability to say 6 a.m. even.
5:30. That's the golden hour.
Oh my
man.
goodness. I can't
tried.
function.
Mine's 6 to 6:30. After 6:30, I feel like a failure, but man,
Right?
I really push for that 6 to 6:30. But like I told you, I have 2 big dog children, and they tend to like in the middle of the night, they have their own beds, which I spent a lot of money on because they tend to chew
And they
them.
don't use them.
And these are indestructible. No, they'll start out in them, but in the middle of the night, it's like they have a nightmare, and they're like, "Mommy, Daddy, I want to get into bed with you." And they don't ask or wake us up. I just wake up with like a 120-pound Great Dane face, like right here, and I'm just like, "Oh my God."
Oh,
Terrible.
the amount of bad gay jokes I can make in response to that. So pick one person. Pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
That would have to be my first boss, Caitlin Cuccio. She was just and still is a really good friend and ally, and taught me so much about leadership just by being herself.
Yeah.
During the really challenging part of the pandemic, my daughter was having a lot of mental health crises. So we went from challenges to crises to multiple hospitalizations, and never once did I get even the slightest hint or hair of guilt or anything like, you should be here. Why aren't you doing this? Yeah. What I got was, do whatever you need. Take care of whatever you need. That was a revelation to me, that I could have a boss that gave me that support. It sent such a message like, oh, okay, now when I come back to work, I'm going to freaking kill it for you. I'm going to kill it. It was like this reciprocal trust of like, oh, I know whatever you need to do, however many days you need to take, that was the only message I got.
Yeah, I can't remember Zig Ziglar or somebody said something that was like, if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your business. Yeah.
And just helping, like giving people that sense that like, hey, you can be the human that you are. I trust you to do your job.
Yeah. No one was blowing up my phone when I had a gallbladder surgery, So like, no one was like, Evan, are you dead? Are you coming back? Nobody was doing that. So yeah. But I've been at the company where I'd bet money they would have. So I understand. It is you get whiplash. Like, wait, so you're not rushing me back? Like, yeah, it's really weird.
Now I have to decide how much time to take off. How much time should I take off? How much time do I need?
Oh yeah, now we got too much freedom. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, what do I need? And then you get to own that decision, which is the healthiest.
Oh yeah. Totally. I think I'm just in quarter life crisis mode, and I'm still trying to figure out basic adult functioning. So, all right, Ryan Woodworker Jones. I don't even know where that's coming from. You're up next.
Hey, that works. Just to put a little spin, or like, I want to put my little touch, a little bow on that last point. It, like, my experience with that too has been nuts since we get 12 weeks of paternity time, which is, for the dad to get that, to me is like, it's unheard of. And I've been like struggling with like, man, 12 weeks, man, that's 3 months. Like, that's a whole quarter of like my impact on the business not being there, and like struggling with this whole, like, am I taking too much time type thing? And every time I've like tried to talk to either my direct report or HR, they're just like, take as much time as you need. Like, this is a big life like change for you. You're about to have a baby.
Oh yeah. Well, if you don't
You
take
do
that
not.
quarter, what's going to happen is the next 6 are going to be messed up. So it's actually also in their best interest that you take that quarter off too.
And they're just like, if you feel like you want to try to come back early, I mean, that's your decision, but like there's no pressure from us to do any of that. And that's like really made me just like, okay, I don't, because I came from a retail background before I got into like SaaS sales and so forth, where retail, it was like, no, you need to get back here on Saturday. And so it was.
Oh, your wife exited labor at 6 p.m. Well, can you get here by 7? Yeah.
We need you to close the store. So it was just a very, again, that like post-traumatic bad job syndrome where like you feel like you need to do these things and you should like, that shouldn't be the way it is. So, I'm glad that you had that experience. I'm super grateful
to Caitlin.
Yes, Caitlin, wherever you are out there. So, but to move forward, because I have the tendency to, I need to be cat herded sometimes, Evan. What's your pump up song?
Expecting me to cat herd you? Okay, sorry, continue.
We're in sales and we like to talk. It's okay. It's all right.
So what was my question again?
What's your favorite pump up song?
Pump up.
And please don't say Eye of the Tiger. We are banning Eye of the Tiger the way we banned Valerie at karaoke.
I have a few. I have quite a few actually. I love Usher. There's a bunch of Usher songs I love to play when I'm getting ready in the morning. Just depending on my mood. Macklemore.
Oh yes. Girl with Macklemore. Love Macklemore.
Macklemore lives in Austin where I live. There's a whole other rabbit hole I could go down there.
Ooh.
Because he's in the recovery community here in Austin. I'm sober, 14 years sober.
Oh, well, congratulations. We actually, by the way, just in case anybody's interested in listening to an episode about sobriety and sales, we have an episode that should be released before this gets released with Jamie Newbeck about that topic.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have a few, what is the name of that group? I'm blanking on their name, but anyway, there's a little bit of fodder for you.
Nice.
I'm happy to introduce you to Jamie, by the way, because she works highly with the same community up in Detroit, actually. So don't know if there's any resources you two can share with each other, or maybe you spread to the world. But yeah. But I love Macklemore. I remember was a thrift shop. My friend Ashlyn and I.
Oh my God, my kids and I
obsessed. Oh, yeah, that was my ringtone. I think I was in my senior year of high school or the year right after high school when it came out. I can't remember, but I do know that I had it like on a repeat all the time to the point where my mother was like, I don't care what music you listen to, except that song, only because she played it too damn much. I'm just so sick of it. Okay, so what is one thing, I feel like I already know where you're going to go with this one, but what is one thing you wish you learned earlier? My answer is filters and furnaces. What's yours?
Like in life?
In anything. It could be in your favorite Taco Bell order. It could be in life. It could be in work. It could be in never wearing that color ever again. That's my problem, not somebody else's. I don't know. Pick whatever angle you want to go with it at.
So I was doing some research over the weekend. I'm still learning more and more about highly sensitive people. I identify as being an HSP. And I learned this weekend that there's a difference between having high sensitivity, having a sensitivity disorder, and just being sensitive. And it's actually, so high sensitivity is actually a scientifically denoted personality trait. Like it's something they can measure in science. And I wish I had known that 25 years ago and somebody had explained to me, hey, you're highly sensitive and here's what this means. When you walk into a room, like you're going to hear like every conversation that's being had and have to sort through all of this auditory information. You're going to be overwhelmed, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. I wish I would have learned that a long time ago. I'm still trying to learn what it means to navigate life as a highly sensitive person and not turn it into there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me.
I'm going to be Googling that because that's the first time I've heard it outlined that way, I would say. So that's very interesting to me. I don't have like a walk in the room when I hear all the different things. I walk in the room and I think I'm here, but I know, and I realize later I heard it all incorrectly. I have a different problem. That's called paranoia. So yeah, that's a whole different tangent to go down. Ryan, I'm making you ask this one because I don't read. So you gotta, and that'll make sense when Ryan asks this question.
Yeah. what book has had the biggest impact on your sales career?
I have read one book cover to cover for context as to why I hate asking this question.
I have some baby books I have to finish.
Well, I don't read books all the way through, so I'm not even gonna claim to. But I have a really weird reading style where I like to read. I digest things very slowly, so I read a chunk and then I think on it for a while. I'm a contemplative learner. I really marinate on like one idea for a while. But yeah, in my 20s, it was Zig Ziglar. It was a bunch of stuff I was reading. I was trying out selling life insurance to see if I wanted to go that route.
Why does every insurance agent know Zig Ziglar?
I was just at like the thrift bookstore going, okay, this is the sales section, pulling down all these books. And yeah, I feel like a lot of the stuff that he preaches, it just resonated with my soul as a person and has made me believe like, oh yeah, sales and me, we get along, and here's why, because I just resonate with all this stuff. So even if I'm not like nerding out over processes or whatever, my belief in my ability to essentially manifest what I want to manifest, and like understanding like it's a give and take in the universe, Yeah. If you're putting the good energy out and you are genuinely doing what you set out to do, what you want is going to come to fruition.
That's the sign of a salesperson. Yeah, that's the description of a sales. You just gave the persona on paper of a salesperson, basically. Yeah.
That thing is, I'm a salesperson in other areas and I don't want to be. And it just is like, I'm like getting on with my cousin, just being like, oh my God, I tried this new cream. I'm going to send you some. She's like, okay, saleswoman. I'm like,
Oh my goodness. My friends laugh because they'll be like, that is so you. That is so you. I'm like, I work in marketing. My specialty is in branding. So yeah, of course. Like that's like, what do you want from me? Like
we've been selling our whole lives.
yeah, I understand. It's like I've made a career off of creating a curated brand experience. Of course I can't turn it off. Like I can't.
One of my guy friends, he kept doing this one time, and I'm like, bro, what are you doing?
Why?
And he's like, my wrinkles in my forehead, I'm trying to smooth them. And so now I always
like, how this works.
I know. But now every time like I try a new moisturizer and I like it, I'm like, hey, bro. You see this forehead? You see these wrinkles? There's none there.
Well, then what's
it's always
problem?
met
I'm
with
27.
Like a middle finger emoji.
From not making horrendously wrinkly faces. That couldn't possibly be it.
Yeah.
I'm just too animated. My friend Marshall works at Murad, and he goes, you're gonna ruin your face because your face is so animated naturally. Like by the time you're 40, you're gonna look 80 because you don't stop moving. And I'm like,
is that a compliment, or you're gonna ruin your face?
I'm pretty sure.
Oh no. That's just how me and him talk. Like we don't know how to enter a room without throwing an insult at the other. I mean, it's all out of good love. It's all out of love. He goes, Evan, you look great today. What's wrong? What do you need? How much money? What is it going to cost? That's our relationship. So all of the irony. I love this question. Shout out to Marshall. What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you? No shade, Marshall. I'm sorry. You're fantastic. But what is one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
So I had an experience at a job where I was really open about my hypersensitivity. We didn't have a lot of in-person events, but we had one. And I was not as participatory as I could have been, or as maybe they wanted me to be, because a lot of the events were in loud places at night. Like hypersensitivity was like super triggered. And then I live a sober life too. And yeah, I got a lot of flack. I got a lot of, got some guilt trips. I got implications that I talk a talk about building team, but I don't really mean it. Yeah. And I was really unimpressed. And that was like a really interesting learning experience for me.
Yeah, I've worked with people that are, I don't know if they would consider themselves highly sensitive, but I know they're open about being neurodivergent, and they can get sensory overload from 1,000 different types of sensory sources in that context. And coincidentally, one of them is also sober. And I know that whenever we had company events, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, I just never get really frustrated with the fact that like every single company event was like in a bar. And like,
Yeah.
I don't live a sober life, but even I get sick and tired of the fact that why is every company event involve liquor?
Yeah.
And I already talked about earlier before we hit record, I can't handle my own. So I don't like to drink around people I don't know very well. I am very selective about that. So I was like, if I'm feeling like this, I can only imagine what my sober neurodivergent friend is going through right now, because she didn't feel safe to not go. She thought it would make her look like she wasn't a good employee. So I think what you said is powerful. A lot of companies need to remember that you need to keep that in mind, that when you're creating company events, they need to be friendly to as many types of people as possible. And you'll never be able to land it 100%. Nothing can be, but you can do better than a bar.
Yeah, for sure.
And I did, even in that circumstance, I made the effort to do the first night, and I went to the bar and I hung out with all of the people where it was loud and they were drinking, and I stayed for the amount of time I felt comfortable and left. And that was kind of the extent of what I had to give for that particular experience, without then taking away from my work performance, because I was really just trying to safeguard the fact that I was going to be expected to perform on top of these other events. How much do I have to give? And so, I mean, that's why I was being mindful, you know?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
A big thing, it's kind of like I guess it's kind of like coached to, at least something I try and pass down to like the people of color that are coming up after me, is that at these events, you don't have to drink, but it's in your best interest to like introduce yourself to the bartender, tip him, and then have him make you like Cokes, or like, add some grenadine so it looks like a mixed drink, and cheers with people and so forth. So that, I mean,
go get a Shirley Temple. Yeah, just go get
it's kind of like
not vodka, wow, Sprite and grenadine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole.
I used to be a bartender, so I think of the cocktail.
Yeah, and so I would like look at the bartender like, hey, bro, like, I don't know all these white people like that. Sorry, my fellow white people, but
wait, how'd you know?
and they would be like, I get it. And I was like, they're getting hammered. I can't do that. So right. Like, just like, I'll throw you a tip, just make sure that, like, make it look like an alcoholic drink for me. And I would stay and be jovial and so forth. And I wouldn't even miss a beat, because it's like, they don't know if I'm drunk, or they may ask like, what are you drinking? And I'd be like, not a Shirley Temple, but I mean, just whiskey Coke, and I just keep drinking. Like, right on. And so I definitely,
with somebody who's bartended, I can see that happening. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to, because we are, it's like, I don't want to say we're held to a higher standard, but like, I hold myself to a higher standard. Like, I can't do what my white peers do and get away with it. Like, I have to be 110% Ryan, day in, day out, and I can't like have any like slippage. Otherwise it's, oh, he's not bought in, or he's not, a trooper or whatnot. So, but to keep it moving forward, because we're salespeople and we like to talk, what is one way you're working to be a better ally for others?
I love that question. I think really putting myself out there is really important to me, especially as a single parent. And we talked about this a little bit, Evan, there are a lot of people who are not only single parents, but they are dealing with custody issues, with narcissistic ex-spouses. And there's a whole population of people in the world that are silently going through hell.
Yeah, I can name 3 people right now I know that are personally going through that.
Because they have an ex-spouse who has decided to make it their mission to try to destroy their lives.
Yep.
And I've lived through that, and I want to be more vocal about it. I feel like this is a chapter of my life where I'm finally coming out from behind the rock that I was hiding under, because when you're attacked so relentlessly like that, you do want to hide. You just want to hide. And I just want people to feel less alone. People who are going through that, I want them to feel less alone in that,
I'm only a little bit speechless, just because I know a lot of people that are in the midst of that. And I know people that they've gotten through it, but they were so beaten up by the process, kind of like a car, it's undrivable. They don't.
Good. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was flattened and just face down. I was good face down for a good 2 years. Just 2 years.
Yeah, and these people don't have AAA for it. They're not getting out of it. You, on the other hand, are creating, when you use insurance speak here, you're creating the collision and comprehensive coverage that these people need. You're helping these people just by merely existing and letting them know that like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a way to get through this and then out on the other side better than you were before the whole thing started. So just thank you for just existing.
And I would love to talk to anybody who is going through that. And I'm open to having those conversations just because you probably need an ear, an ear. In general, my experience is that if you're not following the traditional path, which is you get married, you stay married, you pretend to be happy even if you're not happy, and then that's your badge of honor. Like, oh, I've been married all these years. And like, well, actually, I got away from, an abusive relationship with somebody who was determined to, keep me under their thumb. And they figured out, oh, you're sensitive. Well, I'm just going to use that to manipulate you around, wow, I'm not even really curious about doing that again. That doesn't even interest me. It's turned me into such a different type of person. And I feel so much of the time that people can't relate to me. I'm not doing a traditional thing, and I just want other people who are forging their own path in life to feel validated.
Yeah, I understand that because I have anything but a traditional life, right. And people like you that have, you also don't have a traditional life, and we're not non-traditional in the same ways, but watching someone else design their own path makes me feel safe to design my own, even if it's completely different and no overlap.
And that is why I reached out to you. I was like, thank you for all of your horns, because it just makes me feel less alone in the world.
Yeah, and right back at you.
What's so crazy is like I have probably the most traditional relationship structure going on.
How dare you, Ryan? Get the heck out of this call.
We don't judge. We're not dissing that. We're not down on that in any way.
I am. I'm kidding.
What's brought me to this point is seeing, I think one thing that like we as a culture of like, I love that you talk about like intentional conversations, because I feel like we've jumped into spaces without like really having conversations first. So like the big one for me was a lot of my friends growing up were I feel like teenagers my years were way more sexually active than they are nowadays. And I had friends that got pregnant, had teenage pregnancies, and I knew like, I don't want to go down that path. So I'm not going to get into a bunch of relationships with people. I'm not really too concerned with being Mr. Player or whatnot, like most toxic guys like in their 20s and college age are. And I knew that like, this is the path that I want. This is what I'm going to pursue. And even though I didn't get married till I was 35, kid at 36, which isn't the most traditional because it's a little older on the spectrum.
I'm the child of somebody that had a kid at 36. So look how I turned out. Maybe that's not a good example.
It's a great example. You're amazing, Evan.
I don't know. My mom always will make comments because she dropped me off at kindergarten, and she was old enough to be the moms of the moms that were dropping their kids off at kindergarten because she had a kid so late in life. And I'm like, yeah, but mom, I grew up with those kids. I turned out better than most of them, so maybe you had the right idea. I'm like, I don't know. No shame to early moms though. There's age has nothing to do being a good mother. I just know that my mom just liked to make jokes about how she felt like she was my grandmother, even though.
And it takes two to tango. So as much as
my father
kind of the reason
care about age. He's a stereotypical straight man. He doesn't care. He does not care.
The reason I brought that up is I feel like we've like dove into like the whole thing with like casual sex was like it was this revelation, and it's like, okay, maybe casual sex isn't for everybody. Maybe we need to like slow down and have more nuanced conversations about this before we just full-blown dive headfirst into this, because people's expectations aren't realized. There's just a lot of it's a lot more complex than just like, woohoo,
maybe
naked.
I'm not the right person to ask about that, because I was the person that saw that post about like the average straight person has this many sexual partners in their life. And then I was like, oh, damn, that's me this month. I have a problem. That's a problem. But that's on sex positivity. So my next question, our last question, and you
I
can
want to
take
add
this...
one thing really quick.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Being sex positive means being sex positive around however that is, yes, whatever is the true authentic expression of that for you. And so that would include, hey,
yep,
you know, I'm more of a one person, like,
yeah,
I want relationship, and you know, that's all in that spectrum of positivity.
Oh, exactly. This is a perfect example of sex positivity here. Yeah.
One thing that, Evan, that I would say gay men are very good about, though, is like, you guys communicate so well about like what you want, which, at least from what I've heard from my gay, maybe not your experience, but it seems like there's more.
These gay men, are they? Do you have their numbers?
Sure, I'll DM you some of them. But it seems like there's a little more communication between, at least between gay men compared to cis across genders. I live in the wrong
neighborhood, because I was just like, because we don't communicate.
You're in Chicago. No.
Gay men, we do not communicate very well at all, because we are men that were taught not to communicate. And you got two men in the room with no communication skills together. Yikes. Like, that, welcome to, yeah. There's all those jokes about like, I don't want kids having two dads or two moms. I'm like, why? Well, because a mom, they get stuck in a circle of go ask their mother, which I find that's funny. And then with the dad, it's just they get twice as many awful dad jokes. And I'm just like, you know what? That's gay culture. That whole statement, that is gay culture. I'm just like, all me and my friends do, including the ones I'm sexually active with, is just read each other for filth. That's all we do. It's just insult each other in a humorous way. Yeah, no, I want to meet these men you're talking about that are good at communicating, because I know they exist, but here they're few and far between. On the last note, I love these tangents that Ryan sends me on, because they fuel me up. What is your guilty pleasure after a long day?
Guilty pleasure.
And you're gonna say the same thing, right? I'm not guilty about any pleasures, which is what every guest on our show says every time.
No way! Oh no, I fell right into it. How lame.
We gotta change the phrasing of that question.
Maybe if you want a different response. Yeah, I know. Well, so my guilty pleasure, or what do I do to just kind of refuel myself after the day?
Yeah, what's the first thing you do after work that's for you, you know?
If I'm lucky enough, I get to go to yoga, and then I go swim it. We have a place in Austin called Barton Springs. It's my favorite. I very rarely get to do it because of the time that it takes to do it, but we have a spring that runs through the center of the city. It pours out 68-degree water 24/7, and yeah, so it's just lovely. So that would be, if I had like 4 extra hours in every day, I would do that every day.
I gotta come to Austin and try that out. Also, I have to learn how to swim, and then
but you know how to swim. See, you're missing out on all those gay guys that can communicate. They're all swimmers.
You don't need to know how to swim, Evan. You can put on some floaties. You'll be fine.
I'll put on some floaties. Yeah, that'll work at the gay beach. I'm gonna send Lisa a message in June. Like, she goes, "How's it going?" I'm like, "I'm at the gay beach wearing floaties, and every single man
with the little arm ones."
There's an entire 10-foot radius of no human beings around me, because I'm walking around in RuPaul branded floaties.
Flamingo inner tube.
And a flamingo inner tube. I would add a little skirt to it. I'd have a whole fake Louboutin moment, you know. I'm gonna get those beach Crocs. I'm gonna add a pump to it and everything. It's
more merch. He'll have OSOS merch.
Yes, how to be an OSOS branded drag queen. Yeah, let's do that.
I love it.
I know way too many drag queens though. We couldn't make it happen. So that has been one of the most interesting and enlightening episodes I think we've had in a long time. Lisa, I actually really appreciate everything you've said, because I know our listeners are going to love this, but I also know that I've picked up a lot from this too, as somebody that's kind of always bouncing off the walls, and mindfulness really helps bring me back to reality. And that also helps me communicate better with other people. Ryan, as a future parent, any words you'd like to add? And no, your dogs don't count, but any future words you'd like to add? I'm going to get canceled on Instagram.
No, just that this has been awesome. We obviously went well over our stopping time. So hopefully that's some indication that both Evan and I really enjoyed this conversation with you. I look forward to hopefully having more conversations, especially just your whole experience. I feel like I can learn more from you, more than I have in this short time we spent this afternoon. Lisa, just want to thank you again for joining us. Where can our listeners find you?
Well, I guess LinkedIn is probably the easiest place. I'm not on a lot of platforms, and that's on purpose. I'm not trying to juggle a lot of different social media profiles in my life.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. We will link that in the episode description for you guys. And as always, you can find the Other Side of Sales at othersideofsales.com, on Twitter at OSOS_pod, Instagram at Other Side of Sales, and LinkedIn at Other Side of Sales. And so with that, I'm Ryan Woodard.
I'm Evan Patterson, and this has been Lisa Ekeroth, correct? Yes, I'm saying the last name right. I love making sure to do this live. Awesome. Okay. Just a side note, by the way, I'm going to leave this in the episode. Here's how I remember how to spell your last name. World of Warcraft, Azeroth, Ekeroth. Azeroth, Ekeroth. That's how I remember your last name.
So you're kind of nerdy too.
This episode of I'm a massive nerd. That's my hobby. That's my thing I don't monetize.
So why didn't you jive with me when I was throwing out League of Legends there?
Because you were doxing yourself and I didn't want to dox me, and I kind of just wanted to watch you do that. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm not a good person. We have to remember this. I'm not a good person, but I'm honest about not being a good person. So that way you've consented.
Fair enough.
If you know I'm a horrible person and you still continue to talk to me, you've signed up at this point.
And with that,
the bar so low so I can impress everybody else.
I'm super grateful and just have really enjoyed talking with you guys. So thanks for having me on.
And Evan's chaos. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a great episode of The Other Side of Sales. Ryan, hit the stop record button.